Siamo tornati.
What?
That's Italian for "and we're back." It's a little bit of foreshadowing.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I did my preparation.
Good. I'm glad you're prepared for this. Who's the guest this week? Who's the guest?
This week, Benji, you are the guest, and you'll be earning double.
Great.
And if you remember your multiplication, that's not a lot.
Exactly.
So welcome back from our summer hiatus.
Yeah, I missed you.
I missed you too. In previous years, I just had a vacation, but this, because we have a podcast, it's a hiatus. Felt different.
Was it different?
Yeah. It felt very different.
More enjoyable or less?
When I returned to my dressing room, it felt like I was coming home again. That's because I don't have a dressing room. It's just my home.
Got it. Okay.
All right. So Israel, August 2024. We're recording a podcast.
Yeah.
It's evening. Another day's gone by with no retaliation, explicit retaliation from Iran or Hezbollah.
Right.
Even though there's fighting in the north all the time, they shoot rockets every day.
Yeah.
And how are you dealing with this? How are you?
I'm depressed.
You're depressed.
Yeah. Also a little sick. I'm sure our listeners can hear.
You're a little under the weather.
A little under the weather, but I'll be all right.
Yeah, we'll touch up the nasal.
It could be the depression impacts my physical health.
That's a real thing.
Yeah.
I combat that with alcohol.
I don't.
I try to keep at least a certain minimal amount of blood in my alcohol system at all times. The doctor said I should.
Smart.
Yeah. But other than that, it's working out. And so it's a little bit depressing. It's more than a little bit depressing, but we're muddling through. We're keeping our chins up.
I'm not.
Stiff upper lip.
Not me.
You are. You went. Where'd you go? Well, we're going to talk about where you went this summer.
We'll talk about that.
You were in the U.S.
That was not depressing.
No.
I was in the U.S. for a few days, and then I went to Italia.
Italia. I don't think they say Italia.
I have no idea what they say. Let me start with an apology to Italy and to all Italians that may hear this now or in the future. I don't know. I didn't pick up any Italian, and I don't have any of the pronunciation. And I basically spent 5 days in Italy among nobody spoke English where I was, just about. That's
fantastic. That's full immersion in the language. You should have picked up something.
Right. We didn't, or I didn't. But they kept saying the word allora.
I know what that means.
What does it mean?
Allora means it's like, well then.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like
literally it means.
They use it like
I think literally it means like at the moment. Like al-ora is like hour, and allora like on the hour, but it's figurative.
They use it
like instead of well or yeah.
Exactly, or whatever. Yeah. So that's
allora.
That's what I picked up. Like their connecting word.
Well, let's talk about something less depressing than what's going on in Israel and
the Holocaust.
Anti-Semite. You took the wind out of my sails. You took the words out of my mouth.
Sorry.
Let's talk about the story of your great uncle with a capital G.
Yes, right. My great uncle. Right. So this is
where do we want to start? Why don't we?
We'll start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start.
Let's start at the beginning of. Okay, let's start a little who he is in your family, and maybe with your childhood, what you heard about this great uncle.
So when I was a kid, my grandfather, his name is Simon Hain, I knew, or I had been told, that his brother had been killed in the Holocaust. Mm-hmm.
How many brothers did he have?
So there were 6 in the family. He had 3 brothers and 2 sisters. And I was always very interested in the family history. So I would talk to my grandfather, and I would talk about what they came from Germany. My grandfather was born in 1904. Mm-hmm. And his brother, his older brother, his name was Ignaz or Isaac, that's Germanized Yitzchak, was born in 1902. And I knew, here's what I knew. I knew that he was a lawyer. He was the only one who got an education, really. They came from a very small town called
the town of
Umbach, which is a little village, really.
I thought it was Fulda.
Right. They moved to Fulda later.
Okay.
But the family had lived in Umbach since like the 1600s, or the 1700s at least. And it was like an agrarian place, you know, and they were religious. They were Orthodox, as opposed to like people in big cities. Typically, were not in Germany. The family was Orthodox. And what I was interested in when I would talk to my father was my grandfather was about his childhood and about, you know, life in Germany in World War I. And his father fought for the Germans for 4 years. Right. My great grandfather. And when
your great grandfather, Grandpa Simon's father, fought for the Germans in World War I. Exactly, which is something we hear about. But that you actually, and you have like memorabilia.
Yeah. So I have all kinds.
I'm reminding our listeners that my wife and you are cousins,
first cousins.
So I knew Grandpa Simon,
right?
And my daughter is named after, her middle name is Simchit, after Simcha, which is Simon.
Did not even know that. I love her a little more now.
Yeah. And there's a story about him that I wouldn't mind sharing.
About my grandfather?
Yeah. Which I told at Lital's bat mitzvah, which is that you'd say that they were Orthodox in the town where they lived, but I think this is in Fulda, but I'm not sure. He said that we were walking to shul when he was older. Obviously, I mean, I knew when he was older, but like pretty old in his 80s. And he says to me, Avi, I want you to, he stopped me, we were walking, he stopped me, I said, I want you to remember this. I can remember breaking the ice on the river in Fulda in the afternoon so that the women could use the hole as a mikvah at night. And then that's what he wanted me to remember. Yeah. That's right. So that's dedication. Right. It's pretty cold.
So I knew that he had a brother who was killed by the Nazis. He told me that he had fled to Italy. Ignatz had fled to Italy. And I also remember a story that he told me where I had asked about Ignatz, and he said that he was very stubborn. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, he remembered when he was a kid, and during World War I, there was a lot of famine in Germany, and that they went to a farmer to get eggs, but it was like in the black market. Like they weren't really allowed to do that, but they went to get these eggs. And they were caught by a policeman, he and his brother. They were very young then.
It reminds me of a joke.
And the policeman said, give me the eggs. And Ignatz knew the policeman was just going to eat the eggs, was going to take them. So he threw the eggs on the ground, meaning he didn't want the policeman to get these eggs. Right. So that was just something about the man's personality.
So he was stubborn, provocative.
Something I learned later just about this period, the way they made money in World War I, the family, was they at that point they had moved to the city, the Fulda, the city is, and they had like a little hotel there. And the way they made money was my great-grandmother had a contract with the German government to make kosher meals for the French POWs who were kept in a camp nearby. So Germany in World War I was worried about giving kosher food to POWs 15, 20 years later.
That's amazing.
What a difference, right? Anyway, that's all I knew.
I was going to guess pay-per-view was how they made money. But
no, it wasn't pay-per-view. I asked them also why my Ignatz never left Germany or never left Europe. And he said he was a communist and he wanted to change the world. That's all he said. Now, I don't actually know if he was a communist or not. I don't think he was. Anyway, we left it at that and no one thought much about it. I always was a little bit interested or a lot interested in history, Jewish history, the family history. And so occasionally, as the internet was invented and got...
You waited patiently.
I waited patiently for someone to come up with something, and I would search for his name. And interesting things would pop up. Like one thing that popped up was, actually, first my grandfather passed away. And when my grandfather passed away, I went through a lot of his stuff, and I found a shoebox. And in the shoebox were 3 letters from Ignatz back to America, back to his parents and to his siblings in America. And that gave me some clues as to what was going on, because one was from Milan. It was like in July 1940, and it was saying that they're going to take him to a concentration camp. But not to worry, the concentration camps in Italy are not like in Germany. The second one was from a concentration camp. You actually see on the and I was
postmark.
shocked because I'd never seen like an envelope from a concentration camp called Tosicia. That's how they pronounce it, which we visited. And it said, I'm here 3 days and it's cold and it's snowy, but the people are treating us okay. They understand we're not criminals. And, I'm in charge. Actually, it's interesting. He said, I'm in charge of the 20 German men here and the 18 Chinese.
Chinese.
Yeah, I'll get to that later. It's an interesting part of the story. And the third one is a little bit later on in 1940, where it's again from the camp, and he's asking for money to be sent, and that he understands that it's like going to be very hard to get to America. It's it's unfortunate that there's no way really to get him out. So I knew he was kept in a concentration camp,
and that's those letters are alluding to efforts to get him out,
right? So I knew he was in a concentration camp called Tosicia, whatever that. It didn't mean anything to me at the time in Italy. And then as the internet started to, gain traction, I would search for his name every couple of years, basically, and I would find something. So little tidbits, one was completely random. It was, you remember Google Books? Maybe there still is Google Books, but at one point they would show you the whole book. Yeah. They don't do that so much anymore. But someone had published the diaries of, I'm going to mispronounce this, Eric Marie Remarque. You know who that is? The writer of All Quiet on the Western Front. Huh. Yeah. And his diary from 1936 is a young Jew came by in Switzerland. He had run from Italy. He wasn't loved by the Nazis, you can imagine.
Who?
Eric Marie Remarque, right?
Okay. Was he Jewish?
No, but he wrote the most popular anti-war book ever. And the Nazis were sort of pro-war. So
well, he was popular maybe right in the wake. What year did he write it? 36? No.
He wrote it earlier. I couldn't tell you. I think it won the Oscar. Early 30s it won the Oscar, before Hitler.
Before Hitler won the Oscar?
No. But the movie won the Oscar. You could Google this.
Hitler was not a movie.
Okay, I can't.
All right, sorry.
So he says in the book in 1936 that he was in some spa town in.
There was, though, The Producers, which won a what? It was a play.
Didn't win the Oscar.
No, not the Oscar, but it was the play. No, it's a movie about a play, and then it was a play.
Yeah,
about a movie about it.
What does that have to do with anything?
No, you might be thinking of that. You might be confusing that with real life because that did win awards.
No.
Okay.
No. All Quiet on the Western Front, 1932, won the Oscar, the movie. I don't know when he wrote the book. In the 20s, he wrote the book, let's assume.
And then it was probably popular because I think Germans were anti-war in the wake of World War I.
It was popular all over the world.
But then became unpopular as Germany militarized.
Anyway, there's an entry in his diary that said a young man, a German Jew, Ignaz Hain, was running from the Nazis and came through Switzerland, and he met him. And he felt sorry for him. He was well-dressed, but obviously didn't have anything. And he gave him money to continue his journey onto Italy.
Amazing.
So that just popped up.
Right.
And then a picture of him popped up because of Google Books at the time. Someone wrote a book called It Happened in Italy. It was basically describing how the Italians were amazing to the Jews during the war, which is a complicated subject we can get into. And she was giving examples. And one of the people that she interviewed who said how wonderful it was in Italy during the war for him had a picture of all the men standing in this camp. It was Tosicia, the same camp, in the snow, and it had their names underneath, and one of them said Hain. So I saw him. He was in this picture in this concentration camp.
You would sometimes share some of these discoveries over the years, and I remember some of these.
I would. I don't know if the family's so interested, but I would share. Like I share now all the time. I don't know if people are interested.
I'm interested.
Thank you. Thank you. So that's what I found out online, basically. I also knew that he died. I found a record of when he died through Yad Vashem website, where it said that he died at Mauthausen in March of 1945, which is not too long before the end of the war, and not too long before they got to Mauthausen, the Allies. So anyway, that's all I knew. Then the story jumps, and I jump to COVID, and I was really bored during COVID.
I see.
So I did what I do every couple of years, and I put in the words Ignaz Hain, expecting that maybe some other record will have been digitized, and I'll have some more of this story of what happened to my great uncle. And
but it turns out that you're not the only one bored during COVID.
I wasn't the only one bored during COVID, because what happened was suddenly the computer screen lights up with tons of Italian articles and newspapers, videos on like Italian TV, like not only regional TV, but like the full-on Italian TV, all in Italian, all about my great uncle.
Unintelligible to you, but clearly exciting.
Unintelligible, but exciting. And so,
to be fair, though, Italian always sounds exciting. Like,
they're
buongiorno.
Yeah. They're a lot like us. I mean, they
like Israelis.
Look like us, first of all. You could walk around in Italy and you think you're in Israel. Like people look about the same.
They dress a little
They're better
nicer.
dressed.
Yeah.
They're better dressed. But I didn't understand exactly what I was looking at. I'd like put everything through some translation thing. And then I was in touch. I noticed that it's the same journalist, this guy, Walter. I'm going to mispronounce his last name, so I'm just going to call him Walter.
Even though you're good friends with him now.
We're very good friends. He basically had done...
Try his last name. What's his last name?
De Bernardinis.
De Bernardinis. With an S at the end?
It's hard to say. It's De Berandinis. De Berandinis.
Yeah.
De Berandinis, yeah. Walter. We'll call him Walter. Okay? So, Walter lives...
Walter De Berandinis.
Right. Yeah. This is what happened on his side. Walter is an amazing man. Mm-hmm. I have no idea what he does for a living still. Mm-hmm. But his passion is local history of his town and his region, which is, the region is Abruzzo. The province is Teramo.
Nice.
Thank you. And his town is, oh God, I'm going to forget it. Whatever. His town's on the coast. It's like Nueva Nola or something.
Okay. As opposed to Alto Nola.
Exactly.
What side of Italy are we talking about? Which coast?
So this is the Adriatic coast. It's if you're in Rome and you drive.
Don't sea drop on me. Which side? Tell me, east or west? I know which side the Adriatic is. That's between Italy and Greece.
So it's east.
Yeah.
East, meaning Rome is on the west coast.
Right.
Abruzzo, the region, is on the east.
Is on the east coast.
What is Abruzzo known for? Like actually.
What is it known for?
Earthquakes.
Oh,
it's all about the earthquakes there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I tried to be funny one day because when we were sitting there with people and I didn't say the joke that you likely would have said.
Which is what? Which
is we were having a discussion about what's going on in Abruzzo and why so many people emigrated from there. The joke in Abruzzo is that Abruzzese, or the people from Abruzzo, are like parsley. Uh-huh. You find them everywhere because they really did emigrate everywhere. Uh-huh. And when you hang out in Abruzzo enough, which I highly recommend going to because it is gorgeous. It's the coast, these amazing hills with these little villages on top of them, many of them crumbling because of earthquakes, but gorgeous. And then these mountains. Most of it is actually national parks. Mm-hmm. But there's been so much emigration from there that people from Abruzzo are like parsley. You find it in everything. You find them everywhere. That's what I guess they put parsley on everything. I don't know.
But what's the joke you wanted to make?
Oh, she was describing
like what causes the earthquake
in these villages. They're depopulated. All the villages in the mountains are depopulated. Beautiful, but depopulated. Yeah. And she said, "Well, you can imagine, like you're in the village, like nothing happens every day. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. Nothing happens." And I'm thinking, like, well, every couple of years there's an earthquake. But I did not say
be patient.
They really suffer during these earthquakes. Right. It's like terrible. Yeah. The thing is that this guy was, I guess, because he was bored. Walter was going through the hospital records of a tiny little like Catholic hospital that had existed in his seaside town during the war. And he came across... Is
he a historian? This is just a hobby.
I don't know what he does for a living still. So he knows a lot of history, like a ton of history, very much focused on his region. And he's a journalist. So he he writes things.
Could have been like a malpractice lawyer, like looking for old mistakes in the hospital.
It's something in a toy factory or something. I
what he does for a living.
What he does for a living, right. Basically, he was looking at people who died. He was looking at records of people who died in this old book. And he came across this name, Margaret Wagner, German, who died in January 1945 alone in this little hospital. And it like haunted him. It haunted him.
It's like The English Patient.
I don't remember the movie.
Great movie.
I remember watching it. And
such a good movie that I would even call it a film.
Okay. It bothered him why was there a German woman in this tiny little town of his where everybody knows everybody? Right. What was she doing in this little hospital, and why did she die there? What happened? What's the story? Right. So he started to do a lot of research during COVID, and somehow, and he basically talks about this a lot, like this fortuitous moment where he was reading something online, and her name was, he found it together with the name of my great uncle, Ignaz Hain. Mm-hmm. And that took him off, like, to try to understand what had happened. Mm-hmm. And basically,
even though he didn't know who Ignaz Hain was, but he saw that she was linked to a Jew.
Know Margaret, nothing.
He knew that he was Jewish.
He knew that he was Jewish. He figured it out pretty quickly because he went through the records of the concentration camp. By the way, it's worth a digression here when I say concentration camp.
Okay.
This is going to be a 20-minute digression.
Okay.
Basically, in Italy, right? There wasn't that much anti-Semitism, not like Germany or a place like that. And the history of fascism in Italy is fascinating, really, because, like, Mussolini comes to power in 1922. Hitler ends up copying him in so many ways. Like, it's amazing when you, like, learn the history. But Mussolini himself, like, it's not so clear where his head was about Jews. He had a Jewish lover, like, actually. You could join the fascist party in Italy until, like, 1938. So, meaning it's not the same thing. 1938. So my great uncle.
Why is that surprising that you could join the Nazi party as late as 1930, or the fascist party as late as 1938?
Because it was not overtly anti-Semitic. You couldn't join the Nazi party anytime, right? As a Jew.
A Jew could join.
Sorry, I didn't say a Jew. Sorry. You. I said you. I was talking to you.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. No one can see I'm pointing at you, and I didn't actually point. So the history of, like, what happened in Italy is complicated, but it's also, you could, like,
growing up without
break
being,
it down.
without being
basically,
an expert in it.
They're an ally.
They weren't as terrible as they were far from as terrible as other European countries who helped the Nazis hunt the Jews down.
Right. But what happened there was basically no racial laws until 1938. In 1938, there are racial decrees that are kind of ignored by a lot of people, but not all of them, right? Like, it hit Jews hard. They couldn't join the army. They had to leave schools. They had to leave certain professions, different types of laws. It also said that anyone foreign-born had to leave the country, like foreign-born Jews who had come relatively recently had to leave the country. So that meant that my uncle actually was in hiding. He was living in Milan at the time. That's where he went originally. And when the war came to Italy, when they joined the war, which was not right away, it was when they saw that, like, France was about to fall, they joined the Nazis thinking the war is about to be over. At that point, there's certain decrees. This would be like July 1940, decrees that, or June 1940, actually. There are decrees that Jews that are from countries that have racial laws have to go to concentration camps, or internment camps, we'll call them. Now, why they say that? Why they say Jews who come from countries that have, like, racial laws? The idea was, they're really talking about German Jews mostly, that when Italy joined Germany, they would be like a fifth column. They would be, like, against Italy because they're together with Germany. Does that make sense?
Yes. The Jews would be a fifth column.
Right. So there were like 40-something camps set up. What's a camp? A camp there mostly is some village somewhere where they would take a warehouse or a factory or a hospital or a couple houses, and that would be the camp. And they would live in that town, and that's it. They would just live there. Like, no one killed them. They were treated...
They weren't allowed to leave, though.
They were not allowed to leave. They were pretty much treated okay in those towns. Anyway, there's a town not far from where this guy comes from, Walter. And that town was one of these camps, meaning it became one of these camps.
Tosici.
That's one of them. And there's another one, which is called Civatella del Tronto. Civatella del Tronto.
Civatella del Tronto.
Right. So he was there after he was in Tosicia. And this guy started calling everyone he knew, writing emails to everyone he knew, trying to find out everything they could about Ignaz Hain, my great uncle, who was somehow related or married or something to this woman who was the person that he's thinking about all day because she died in this hospital.
Right.
He talks to someone up in Civitella del Tronto. Civitella del Tronto is like a 20-minute drive from where he lives, from where Walter lives.
And
Walter is on the coast.
Yeah.
Let me find the name of the town.
He's in Abruzzo.
It's on Abruzzo,
Yeah,
in the Teramo district. It's Giulianova. Giulianova is the town.
How do you spell the first word of that?
Giulianova. With
like
a G.
G-I-U?
Yeah.
Giulianova.
Is on the coast.
Si.
And then you go up into the hills, into the mountains. And one of these towns, this amazing town actually, in the hills is called Civitella del Tronto. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. It's actually famous because there's like a fort on top of it. Like the second biggest fort in Europe.
Like a Middle Ages?
A fortress. Yeah, Middle Ages fortress. So you can walk around up there and see it. It's cool.
I've never been to that area of...
Nobody has.
I mean,
people that live there have, but I haven't met anyone else who's been there. Anyway, he talks to someone up there, and the guy says to him, I don't know what you're like looking into. Yes, there was a Jew here at the record show, Ignaz Hain. But I don't know what this, like, what do you want? Like, okay, then there's this woman, I don't know what.
You're late.
Yeah. But he said, can you like explore more deeply? Like he asked this guy and he keeps exploring about what was going on. Who is this woman? Who is this man? Why did she die in this hospital? And then he gets to a guy named Guido Chessy.
You're not just saying Guido because you forgot his name.
His name is Guido.
Okay.
Guido is...
Is there going to be someone named Enzo Gorlami?
No. Guido is the grandson of the mayor, who was the mayor during World War II.
Of course he was, Benji.
Yeah.
You're just finding this out now?
Guido is...
the grandson of the mayor of...
Civitella del Tronto, where the internment camp was.
Yes.
Okay. Guido... Now, his grandfather was the fascist mayor. I mean, they would call them Podesta. Podesta is what they called a mayor at that time during the fascist times.
Podesta.
Guido says, oh my God, you're asking about this girl, this woman, Wagner. My grandmother kept a bag of all of her stuff. When she died, my grandmother took the bag and kept it and put it in a trunk in case anyone would ever come and ask about these people.
Amazing.
Yeah.
This is like the parallel to your grandfather's shoebox with the letters.
It is, but it's even more interesting because you're thinking like, who keeps documents not even relating to your family? You know who does? Guido and
Guido's
his grandmother.
Yeah.
Because when you go to this little town of Civitella del Tronto, there are only so many attractions. There's the fortress.
Right.
There's the
you get bored of that if you grow up
There's the gelato. There's the view.
There's the earthquakes.
And then there's this, like, I think it's called Museum Nona Museum. Nona Museum is Guido's museum dedicated to everything his grandmother...
Nona means grandma.
Yeah, everything his grandmother ever had. And his grandmother kept everything back from the 1300s because her mother kept everything.
Is her body embalmed and like on display there?
It's not. But the family is like, has been like aristocrats in this town since...
Then I take that back.
Since the 1300s.
Okay.
And so it's like the history of the town through everything the grandmother ever kept. And that's why they kept this trunk and they kept this bag. And it was sitting under a million things in this museum.
The old bag kept the old bag.
The old bag kept the old bag, right? So this interested Walter a lot.
Yes.
He takes the bag and he starts looking through it and he understands and builds the entire story. And that becomes to him the greatest love story of World War II. The story,
Except for the English patient. Did you ever see the English patient?
No, this one was true.
I don't mean to minimize it.
And he starts to like write articles about it and he wrote a curriculum for the schools to study it in Germany and in Italy, to study the story of the two of them. Now,
did that succeed? Did people study the story?
It's like part of their curriculum there. And there are a million articles were written about it. Now, what's the story, actually? Okay.
We'll hear that in our next episode of Chopped Liver on the Beach. Stay tuned. No, sto solo scherzando, which means Well, you know what that means.
I'm
That
just
means,
kidding.
just
probably.
kidding.
Yeah,
We're not going to put.
We would do that.
Could not leave
our
so many
audience.
people in suspense.
Anyway, here's the story that he put together.
Okay, let's hear it.
The actual story, and that is that my great uncle Ignaz had a girlfriend, maybe wife, who was German, Margaret Wagner.
In Italian, Margherita.
In Italian, Margherita, and he was Ignazio. They met. He was a lawyer, and they met somewhere in Frankfurt. She's from Frankfurt, born in 1907. And when Hitler came to power, I guess, things got worse and worse for him. In 1936, he ran. And he ran to Milan. And she joined him in Milan in 1938.
Okay.
1938 is when the racial laws happened in Italy. And when he had to kind of go into hiding a little bit, I guess, because foreign Jews were not allowed to stay. But many did. And tons of Jews came into Italy.
Well, where's he going to go? Yeah, right, exactly.
Right. He then is...
Except he maybe had a chance to get to America to your grandfather.
Right. So we saw this in the... I'll get to... soon I'll get to what's in the bag. Like, what's in the bag? That's like a thing. But he basically then, in 1940, right, like when the Italians joined the war, he is sent as a foreign-born Jew who's from, Germany. He is sent to a concentration camp. The first one is this one, Tossicia, which is also in the Abruzzo region, about 20 minutes away from Civitella del Tronto. He spends about 7 months there. And then in 1941, he's sent to Civitella del Tronto. In Civitella del Tronto, he is...
Is that a worse place?
They're both...
Bigger place?
Well, Tossicia was a smaller camp in that there were fewer people there at the time. Later, it became one of the worst camps, actually.
In Italy,
because the gypsies came in and took their place. And the gypsies were actually treated worse than the Jews. I think the idea was they need less food and stuff. He is in Civitella del Tronto, and she is still in Milan. He had been arrested and sent there. And she comes and she visits him in Civitella del Tronto all the time. And eventually what happens is, just to give you a little bit of the background here in terms of the Holocaust in Italy, everything changes in September 1943.
Okay, what happened then?
September 1943 is when the Allies start landing. They take Sicily, and the Italians basically have a coup against Mussolini. And they vote him out of power. Mussolini's not like Hitler, right? Because Mussolini is subservient to the king. It's King Emmanuel III at that time. Hitler was not subservient to anyone. And also, it never had happened, but like the fascist party could like kick Mussolini out. That couldn't happen to Hitler either.
Except to the devil. Hitler was subservient to the devil.
Good one. Yes.
The more I learn about this Hitler, the less I care for him.
Yeah, me too.
Norm Macdonald.
Good. July 1943, they kick Mussolini out of power. You know the whole story with Mussolini.
They hang him upside down.
No, that's later. That's later. What happens is they
put him in prison.
And then the Germans spring him from prison. But basically, there's something called the 45 days. Say it with me.
The
45 days.
Or in Italian, I don't know how to say that in Italian.
Okay, fine. Me neither. During those 45 days, the new government of Italy is basically saying we're going to stay on the German side, but are actually negotiating an armistice with the Allies. And Hitler is ready to pounce, right? The Nazis. When they announced the armistice on September 8th, 1943, all hell breaks loose, right? Suddenly, the Germans invade from the north. The Americans are coming from the south. Everything is nuts. And there's a decree from the new government saying that the Jews can all leave the concentration camps. But very quickly, most of the country is taken over by the Germans, and they reestablish Mussolini in a puppet regime in the north. And they say, no, the Jews have to stay. During that period, there were Jews who escaped from all the camps, and some camps were liberated by the Allies.
But some were not, and some were And many Jews were trapped in camps.
And many Jews were trapped. There's a question as to whether he ever had a chance to run in those days. Like that, I don't know. After that, after like September 1943, that's when Jews are deported and killed. Like they're deported mostly to Auschwitz. Not only German Jews, but Italian Jews too, right? Like that's when the Jews of Rome and all the big cities, many of them deported. Like 20% of the Jews, somewhere in that range, are killed.
I didn't know that much.
I believe it's something in that range. Something like 8,000 out of maybe 40,000. I'm not sure exactly. So what happens is he's in this camp for years, right. Civitella d'Otranto, and he seemingly has a good relationship with the Podesta, the mayor, who tries to save him.
Nono's husband?
Nono's husband. Exactly. At the end, basically, he's deported.
Right.
At the end, the Germans come in trucks. Before that, the Jews are taken out and they have to do work on something called the Gustav Line, which is like, laying mines and stuff. And eventually they're deported in trucks. There were 2 times when the Germans came to take them, and he was taken the second time. That would have been in like May of 1944.
Okay.
To Fossili. Fossili is like the transit camp, where from there they would send Jews elsewhere. And August of 1944, he's sent from there to Auschwitz in the last transport. Meaning that's the last transport before the Allies get there.
Terrible.
It's like unbelievably tragic because he's stuck in Auschwitz until January 25th of 1945. Like he obviously was not killed right away in Auschwitz.
Survived for a long time.
That's 2 days before the Russians show up. He is shipped off to Mauthausen. And from Mauthausen, like I said earlier, he dies there in March of 1945. So she actually dies before him. She dies in this hospital.
What did she die of?
We don't know.
Broken heart.
So yeah, Walter says of a broken heart. So this is all very surprising to me to read in all these translated Italian things and trying to understand all these news magazine articles about it, because we didn't really know that there was a German woman involved. That was like kept from us, like that idea. And it seems like he probably stayed in Germany and then in Italy because of her, like that he was connected to her.
Right. He was in love with her.
Right. So that was like the Shanda, of the whole thing. And their pictures, meaning in these articles that I'm reading.
What do you call a Beis Yaakov girl on a motorcycle?
Shanda.
A Shanda on a Honda.
Good. Okay. What's amazing to me was, first of all, seeing pictures of him. You see, because in these things I was reading during COVID, there are pictures of him and her, like in Milan. There's pictures of them in these towns that were these camps, like when she would come and visit him. And she was given special permission to come visit him, like because he was close to the mayor, I think. And that was it. Like it was this crazy story that I read about, and I didn't fully understand. But suddenly I knew in this like region in Italy, it's a whole story. My great uncle who
all these documents were being published, and that Walter was publicizing it, writing about it. Made a documentary about it.
I don't have a documentary, but it was like 10-minute
news stories
on like the national news there. Like news is very slow in Italy. Like every day is a slow news day as far as
El giorno, no earthquake. So a story of a Catholic woman and a Jew. Walter, tell us what you learned today from a Nona bag.
Right, we'll go back in time. I found the whole thing fascinating, and I thought to myself, one day I'm going to just go and visit these places, and I'm going to meet this Walter, and I'll see the bag. Like, what's actually
what kind of an Italian
bag?
name is Walter? This is like
I don't know. I didn't ask him that. He
needs to have a more Italian name, like Enzo Gorlami.
That would be good, but he doesn't.
Okay,
he's very Italian, though. I could tell you. Okay. I said to myself, "Hey, Benji, why don't you go over there and see this thing one day?" But I tell myself a lot of things that I don't do.
Right.
So I didn't have much faith in myself that I would actually do this. Then a couple weeks ago, I was getting depressed by the war. And I said to my wife, Farah, let's get out of here for a little while. Let's do this thing. And we started to look at places to go, and it turns out there's like no flights anywhere. I don't know if you noticed this.
Yeah.
So
I took my grandsons to Mini Israel.
I would never go
Mini Israel.
Israel's already very mini.
It's an attraction, right? Where it's all these miniaturized things, all the buildings.
Yeah.
And it's really like Israel. The trains don't work.
Uh-huh.
The airport there is closed. Planes don't move. It's it's exactly like Israel is.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on with your story.
I had no
It's much
idea
more
that thing
interesting.
still exists, actually.
It's pretty good, actually. I recommend it. I don't want to plug them because they don't pay for advertising, but not bad.
I looked at flights, and there were like not so many places to go with very little notice. And one of them was Rome. Yeah, we had been to Rome not that long ago. Love Rome. And then I said, what about Walter? Like, where is that place?
Right.
Like, what is that? And I saw it's like a 2.5 hour drive from Rome. It's nothing.
Yeah. Or a train ride.
Yeah. So we booked the flights.
Mm-hmm. You rented a car there?
That was a little thing. I screwed up.
What do you mean?
Oh, I hope my wife doesn't listen to this podcast.
She doesn't.
Okay. Because what happened was we flew into Rome. Now, this was right before Hezbollah was about to attack. And then they did an attack. Right. So I was hoping to miss the whole thing, actually. Right. But they knew I was going there. And they're like, oh, we want that Jew to suffer also. We'll wait for him to get back. And I'm still waiting. We get to the airport there. And I had ordered on like one of those sites, like whatever, where you can order hotels or cars, like booking.com. I ordered.
Okay.
And I looking at different cars and this and that and this and that. And I saw like there's very expensive cars and then there's like normal cars. Right. But I saw some of them are automatic and some of them are manual.
And you can't drive the manual ones.
I don't know how to drive a manual car.
But they were cheaper.
No, it wasn't that. It was that I was like, oh, remember when you're looking at these cars to pay attention to that. Because that'll be important. Okay, so I basically didn't pay attention to that. I found this amazing deal on a car. Right. It was like looked like a nice car. We get to the airport, and there's already a guy. I think he was Palestinian, angry at them when I walked in, like an Arab guy, like really angry. I think about something similar.
That he accidentally ordered a stick shift?
Yeah, I think so. So they basically upcharged me like a lot.
To get the automatic.
But they gave me like a really nice car. They gave me this Mercedes, which was amazing on the mountains. Like,
okay, Mercedes aren't that nice in Europe. They're like, it's like Chevrolet or a Buick.
I'm just saying it ran really well.
That's nice. Okay.
But I was annoyed the whole time at how much I was paying. And what I said to Farah was they made like booking.com made a mistake because I believed it in the moment. But I didn't tell her that night I looked back at the website and it could be that Benji.
This car comes with a manual. That could only be helpful. Okay. All right, so you have the car.
Booking.com came out like golden.
Yeah.
They wrote manual. Okay. I made the mistake. We basically, so we drive out to this place. We stayed in the most beautiful place I've ever stayed because there's no tourists there. So we basically stayed in this like Italian estate. It was gorgeous. And we then went on a little tour. We actually saw where the hotel where Mussolini was rescued from by the Nazis.
And I saw that photo,
like, glider attack. It's up high in the mountains. It's gorgeous. And then the next day, Walter comes to meet us, and we're in love. Like Walter brings his daughter who speaks some English. She translates along with Google Translate. I don't know if you know, like Google Translate when you have an Android phone. Like, do you have an Android phone?
I do.
Yeah, we're the two losers of Android phones. But the only amazing thing about Android is, on WhatsApp now, you can press translate.
I did not know that.
And you could speak.
It's because I speak Italian.
Yeah, you can speak in English and it comes out in Italian.
Right.
Or you can do like conversation translate on Google Translate. And it works okay, whatever. We figured out how to talk to each other, and his daughter was very helpful. First thing he does is he hands us a love letter. The love letter is to Margaret.
Okay.
From him. And it was like very moving. Now, I'll be honest with you. I still had in my head
the love letter was to Margaret from
Walter.
Not from Ignaz.
No. Walter's
writing to a deceased Catholic woman who loved your great uncle.
He is thinking about Margaret a lot.
And he wrote a love letter to
Margaret.
To Margaret.
Yeah.
Okay.
About how much she suffered, how he fell in love with her and with her love story. It's
Is
actually
Walter
quite
married?
Beautiful. Well, we met his wife later. Yeah, he's married.
Does she know about the love letter to?
I think she knows about this. Okay. He won a contest with it of some sort. And it was moving, but I'll tell you the truth.
I've been trying for years to win love letters to a dead woman World Series, and I've failed.
At some point, the trip, Farah said, you're really on team Ignatz, and he's on team Margaret. And there was some truth to that, because in my head, I have why did he marry this non-Jew? Like, that sounds terrible. But I had it I have it, whatever. Right. It's like a thing. Like, it just wasn't done in our family.
Right.
But
wasn't done successfully.
No. Anyway, he took us first to up to Civitella del Tronto, the camp, the town, whatever. And we met with Guido there. We went into his little museum, and he took out
grandmother's
the bag.
Right.
And they open up the bag. And the bag, he starts laying picture after picture after picture and document after
I saw a photo that you sent of this, right, where a huge table is covered with
and that's only
dozens of pictures and documents.
It's only part of it. It's basically like my whole family history in this bag. Pictures of my great aunts and uncles and their children and my great grandparents. Tons of letters from my great grandparents to Ignatz in the camp sent through the Red Cross. And my grandparents' wedding invitation that he kept.
Right, that's amazing.
And tons of attempts.
Grandpa Simons and Grandma
Cecilia.
I almost said this.
My grandmother.
And Grandpa Simons and Grandma Cecilia's wedding invitation.
Right.
From
1937, I think.
37.
Yeah.
It's in good condition also.
It's in great condition. It's been kept by...
Grazie a nonna.
Right. You see, there also, you see the attempts to get him out, meaning my own grandmother tried, and you see the responses from the government and from, the American government saying, no, there's a quota, or you haven't shown sufficient funds to be able to to make sure that he isn't a burden on society, or all these answers that they keep giving, mostly related to the quota that they are not willing to take in any more German Jews. This is deep into the war. This is like 1941, right? Like, we know things are bad.
Not a good look for the United States of America.
So the first thing he does is he takes me to this town. I meet with Guido. We go to Guido's house, which is amazing. If you ever go to Civitella del Tronto,
I'm going there.
Yeah, you meet Guido, and because he's like royalty there, he basically, on both sides of his family, there are aristocrats in this town that go back to like the 1400s. So he could pick his mom's house or his dad's house. And he said, I picked my mom's house, and I made my brother take my dad's house. And in this house, it's like there are frescoes, and it's like gorgeous. Obviously, the earthquakes don't help, but like it's amazing. He also has...
How do Italians look at, like in Italy, when you go there, like the houses are like dilapidated, but we find that charming.
Yeah.
Do they also find that charming?
I asked them that because the views are amazing.
No, not the view. I'm talking about the buildings.
No, but I'm saying
like they're held together by like pieces of metal that they nailed into the wall sometimes.
Particularly there because of the earthquakes.
Right.
There's a lot of that. And everything is sort of a little bit falling apart. Not everything. A lot is sort of falling apart. There's also, it's a weird social experiment going on there of more churches than people, it seems like, but nobody in any churches. Like, and I was thinking about that a lot. Like Europe now, this is way off topic. Western Europe in particular, a place like Italy is like a big social experiment of like
not having children.
There's that, but also atheists just running a society, not imposed on them, meaning if you could say like communism imposed that on believing people.
Right.
These are people that have come to the conclusion on their own that like the priest is an idiot and I'm not going to go to church.
Right.
The churches are mostly closed actually around there. Like even though you want to see them, like you can't. But Guido has the largest mug collection I've ever seen. And the weirdest part was one of the mugs has like fascist soldiers on it. And I was like, Guido, what's up with that one? Because Guido's...
This is for the strong coffee.
Right, because I gave the same speech everywhere I went. I met like tons of dignitaries and people because, I forgot to tell you.
You guys are like royalty.
Yeah, before we arrived, there were at least 20 articles about the fact that Professor Benji Hain is coming.
You became a professor.
I think he wanted to build me up a little bit. Right. So he made me a professor, which is fine.
Right.
He also told everyone I'm from Boston, which was a little bit annoying.
Well, you are a little bit from Boston.
I am, but I'm actually more recently from Israel.
That's true.
But I think it's like not so okay to be from Israel now. Like it just complicates things. Like, are you a war criminal? Like, but here they're just, it's just a Jew.
It's just a Jew from Boston.
Yeah. It's easier. It goes down easier, I think. So there was tons of articles about us before we arrived. Like, Professor Benji and his wife are coming, and they're going to go to everywhere and see everything. So we knew this. We saw this. We went in the hotel. There's newspapers, and we opened one up, and there was the article about the fact that we were coming, and we came.
You were in the paper.
We were in the paper all over.
Your picture was in the paper?
The picture is not in those articles that were coming.
Right.
They're in the 30 articles about the fact that we came.
Right.
With Farah. Like I told her, bring a nice dress because, we're going to be like Italian royalty here.
Professor Hain and his wife land in Rome and get an automatic car. They're on the way. There is a God.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, there is a God.
Yeah, exactly. We
open the churches.
So Guido showed us everything. Right. I didn't even have a chance to see it all. There was so much of it. Mm-hmm. It tells so much more of the story that I won't get into here. Just tons of details. Mm. And he promised me, Guido did, that he's going to scan it all and send it to me.
I guess a lot of our listeners may be wondering, did they have children together?
No,
they did not.
They did not have any children. The truth is, what's amazing about this place where he was kept is that it was a totally weird mix of Jews there.
Are we going to get back to the 18 Chinese men?
Oh, okay. So, all right. So first he was in this place, Tosicia. That's the place we're going to go to next. So I'll get to that soon. Okay. But the place where he spent most of his time was Civitella d'Otranto, which I recommend everyone in the world go to. It's the most beautiful little town you can imagine.
So much for Jews in Europe, timing is everything. And this is a good time for Jews to go there.
Now's a good time. Yeah. But there are no Jews in this whole region. There rarely were ever any, except for this period, as far as I understand it. In this town were, let's say, 200 people interned. Maybe 80 of them were German men.
German Jewish men
who had been taken there, because of the decree in 1940. The rest were Libyan Jewish families from Tripoli.
Who were visiting Italy?
Full-on families. No, they were not visiting Italy. No, they were sent there by the Italians. Deported to Italy.
Because Libya was an Italian colony.
Libya was an Italian colony. And
so they deported Jewish families from Libya to northern Italy to camps.
Not northern Italy, central Italy.
Central Italy
to these, not even camps, they're villages in the middle of nowhere. These Jews must have not known what hit them. And what's amazing is you can read their testimonies and see them. Like if you search Yad Vashem under the names of these towns, you can hear their testimonies.
Right.
And
some of them survived.
They all survived because they were actually British citizens, British subjects. They'd come to Libya from Gibraltar or Malta, maybe something that was that at the time the British had. And so because they were subjects of England, first of all, they got extra rations the whole time. And they were not deported to Auschwitz. They were deported to Bergen-Belsen and held there as potential hostages at the end of the war, to trade for something. None of them were killed. So you can read their testimonies about camp life and their interactions, not only with the local Italians, which when you read these testimonies, you really do start to love the Italians there because the priest helps them in terms of figuring out when the Chagim are. They have their shochet is allowed to go out and do actual shchita. They're given matzah. They're taken care of actually, but also their interactions with the German Jews. And
they're like, this matzah is delicious. You put a little lard in the matzah. This reminds me of the Italian chef in the Catskills who they would bring up to make desserts for Pesach. He was the pastry chef, and I'm in one of the Jewish hotels in the 1960s, whatever, in the Catskill Mountains, and it was delicious desserts. And finally, they go, "We got to go ask him, how does he do this? He's a magician." And they said to him, What's an Italian name?
Guido?
Guido we used already. Enzo, Chef Enzo. How do you make these delicious desserts on Passover? They don't let you. They don't let you use flour. He says, "I know. I have to bring my own."
It's good.
So the matzah was delicious.
Yeah.
Well, the Italians do have this like great side to them where they don't really. They want to be happy and they want other people to be happy. So it's so much fun to go there.
I think so.
There's like a great energy there.
But what happened was I read one of these Yad Vashem type online like testimonies of a Libyan Jew in this town, in this camp. And
you are a professor.
He describes the day that they were deported. Mm-hmm. And
were they deported together with? No.
Yes, in the same trucks to Fossili. This,
and from there they went separate ways.
And from there, the German Jews were sent on the last transport to Auschwitz, and they were sent to Bergen-Belsen. But he describes there in this thing, which you can read online, he describes that when the Germans came, there was a Jew, a lawyer named Ignaz Hain, whose wife was not Jewish, who stood between him and the German soldiers and said, "You have to take me too." And the German soldier put a gun to her head and said, like, if you say another word, I'm going to shoot you in the head. It says this like in his testimony.
She wanted to go together with
She
Ignaz.
did not want to lose him. Yeah. They don't know where they're headed, but right. So it shows the love, actually. And you go to a place like this, the German Jews were kept actually in a convent a little bit outside of the town. And the priest let us in and we could see everywhere where they walked around and stuff and we're hanging out.
Right.
And the Libyans were more in town, but they had school there. The German Jews taught them. They taught them like Hebrew and Italian and English. Like it's a pretty interesting story.
Amazing.
But it all ends horribly.
Right.
Like actually,
but not for
horribly. Like you.
Well, at least the Libyan Jews survived.
Right. Meaning you thinking the whole time that how good this is relative to the Germans, but then you realize that the fact that they were held there meant they were deported from there. Right. In the end, and that's just a horrible thing. And
but at that point,
meaning his story for me and what I can trace ends with his deportation. Actually, we do know, meaning because of the Libyans who survived, the German Jews really didn't. None of them. I don't think they even survived Auschwitz. But the German Jews, the Libyan Jews, in their testimonies, they talk about the fact of how the trucks are bombed from the air the whole way. Meaning, basically, the Allies are there, and they're still deporting the Jews, which is like one of the craziest things when you really study the Holocaust is how late they were still trying to kill us and killing us. If you look at like something like Hungarian Jews, how the lengths they'd go to, like from these Greek islands or from here, to get them to Auschwitz or to get them to die.
They really hate us. They really hated us, and many people still really hate us.
Yeah. Anyway, from there we
went. Hard
to
to fathom.
We left Guido, and I told you about his mug, meaning
you don't mean his face. You mean the fascist mug.
The fascist mug. So he explained the fascist mug. He's not a fascist. It's just he's so anal.
Benji, Professor Hain, I'm not a fascist. I really like a coffee.
No, he's so anal. He said that his friends call him a fascist.
Anal? I mean, he only had
meaning he's so
so surprised that he's anal.
Is the word supercilious or punctilious or what's the word?
Punctilious?
Yeah, that.
No, but how many anal? How many people? Is everyone who has a museum for their grandmother anal?
Yes.
I don't think so.
I think so. Look at this guy. He is.
Museo da Nonna.
Yeah.
And it's not. It sounds like a yogurt museum.
No,
I'm not sure I said that. No, because of Danona.
Oh, Danona. They took us all kinds of places around the town. Now, some of these pictures were of my great uncle, and of Ignaz and Margaret are, if you're walking.
She's your great aunt.
My great aunt. Okay. If you're walking, well, there's a question of whether they got married. They couldn't have gotten married in Germany. And here, what's an interesting part of the story is once he's deported from there to Fossili, she's trying everything to get him out of there. And so they're sending information that the mayor, actually, Guido's grandfather, sent something saying they're married. He's married to an Aryan woman. Like maybe that'll help.
Right.
But there's no records anywhere they're actually getting married. And there's no indication that they necessarily got married. They were married, obviously. But they take us out to this place where some of the pictures were taken, which are these like beautiful rock formations right on the side of the town. And Walter...
See, earthquakes are good for something.
Yeah. Walter has me stand up there with him with an Israeli flag, an American flag,
and a Boston flag.
No, and a German flag. Meaning to take this picture. Like he was really into the whole thing.
Israeli flag, Italian flag, and German flag.
No, it was American flag.
I'm not sure
where we didn't have any Italian flag there. No, maybe we just couldn't get one. I don't know. From there, we go to Tosicia, where he had spent this first 7 months. That's the first camp. And the Chinese people were there. So I asked what happened to all the Chinese people, because the Chinese people were sent there because when the war started, they were enemies, right? Suddenly, because they were attached also through the Axis, they were attached to the Japanese who were fighting the Chinese. So these poor Chinese salesmen were actually enemy aliens, like trying to make a living in Italy. They were just like door-to-door Chinese salesmen. But
because China was an enemy of Japan, because of Japan's aggression against China.
Exactly.
And Japan was an ally of Italy.
Yeah.
And one of the Axis powers, then Chinese were an enemy in...
Right. So they were in this town, Tosicia, which is completely depopulated, except for their city hall. There were like 10 people who met us, along with...
On Christmas Eve, when the priest would bring the Jews food, the Jews in Tosicia or in the other one,
Civitel del Tronto.
Civitel del Tronto, they would say, no, we're good tonight. We're eating Chinese.
Okay, good. Anyway, I said, what happened to the Chinese? Like, I know what happened to the Jews. Like, they were all sent to Civitel del Tronto. And then I told you, gypsies came in. They stayed. And there's a Chinese population in Abruzzo now. And there's a famous artist. One of them became a famous artist, which I never heard of. And like, the Abruzzo Chinese people, they're all around here in these villages. I'm like, what? I didn't know that. So it was a funny little thing that you'd only learn this way.
Because they were concentrated there and they became a community. And they probably have more kids than the Italians do.
They probably do. Another thing I learned, Italians will not drink cappuccino after like 10 a.m.
How did you learn that?
11 a.m. I ordered a cappuccino at the wrong time.
You were mocked.
It's like a thing. Yeah. And I was talking to basically Walter's daughter, the only person I could speak to the whole trip because she speaks some English. And I said, what's up with all the coffee? Like, it's the only thing here that's cheap. And it's social. It's social. We go, we drink. But it's all espresso.
Right. Very short espresso.
So I'm like, but how long could the conversation be? Like, that's it. It's like, no.
It's very hot. So it takes a few minutes to drink.
Yeah. Anyway, we went to Tosicia. The whole city hall met us. They gave us a couple books as gifts. They gave us a tour of their museum, which we
not the Grandma Museum, a different museum.
This is in Tosicia, the first camp he was in. Couldn't understand a word of what that man said, but they had some interesting looking pictures.
The mayor.
This is the mayor. I didn't understand either. I didn't understand any of them ever. Meaning,
but you got the feeling.
I got the feeling. And then Walter took.
Did you get a lot of kisses on the cheeks, like
tons, double kisses. I never knew which way to go with that. And then Walter took us down to his town.
Your nose is bandaged.
Giulianova, this little town where the train
sounds like the new Jew, Giulianova.
No, it's not that. It's the place where he's from, where she died. Meaning, she stayed in Abruzzo and died in this hospital.
Right.
Something in the range of like 7 months after he was deported. And he wanted to show me certain things. So he took me to City Hall. First of all, everybody knows Walter. It's like Norm. Like Norm.
Norm from Cheers, not my Norm.
No.
Right.
Everyone in the whole town knows this man. Like, it's the weirdest thing in the world.
Small town.
It's not that small actually, but now, we went into City Hall. We saw the record in the old book that started it all, a record of showing her death. He then took us to the Catholic cemetery where, at his own expense, he has put up a big plaque to her, to my great aunt,
Margaret,
who did everything for her love of her life, Ignaz Hain. And then he took us into the cemetery to the place where she likely had been buried. I didn't know this. This is interesting. In Italy, you're only buried for 100 years, and then they bury someone else there. They like dig you up. I don't know if you knew that.
They dig you up and do what with
I don't know. I didn't ask all the gory details, but you only have, it makes sense actually. Like, you only have your spot for 100 years because Italy's a very old country.
They dig you up and make coffee mugs from your bones. Don't tell Guido.
Then he took us to the place that was the hospital she died. Mm-hmm. And I think you could tell.
Why do they, that's why they only think she was buried there? Because she's been dug up?
No, she was put in she was buried in a pauper's grave.
Oh, yeah, she died with nothing.
Subsequently,
but how did she get her bag to Nona?
Nona, that's the interesting thing. Nona must have heard she died. Her husband knew, certainly, she might have known her, first of all, as the woman of Ignaz Hain, who was like the leader of this camp, whatever. And she went to this hospital and took it, or went to the place where she had been staying and took it, or was given it and kept it. He then took us to the hospital. And the truth is, even then, I was so tired. I went out of the car to take a picture of the hospital.
That's a good time for an espresso.
I think he was offended because he's trying all the time to make me realize she's my aunt,
right.
Make me have that empathy for her too, when all my questions are directed at my great uncle.
Right.
Now, I've had since then a little bit of a change of heart.
Epiphany.
I'll tell you one other tiny little thing. Mm-hmm. Saturday night, we went to a trumpet concert, which is what you do in these little villages.
Of course.
And Guido showed up.
When you're not
Guido. Guido wasn't there. Actually, Walter showed up. He knew the entire, everyone, of course, Walter. And then we're in this piazza there, and we're listening, and he points to the house.
Nice piazza dropping.
Thank you. He points to this house, this sort of building that overlooks piazza. He said, this was another camp. 200 Jews were in there during the war, right? So all these little towns have this hidden history, which is amazing. And so what I said was, now this is the problem, because now I have to actually do it. And because I'm saying on the podcast, I also have to do it. I forgot to say, when we went to Civitel del Tronto, they took us to the Catholic cemetery in the churchyard, basically. And he showed me 3 graves of Jews who had
died in the camp.
Who had, in the corner, who had died in the camp. Libyan Jews, really. And we know their names, but there's nothing there. Nothing. There's just a tiny little Jewish star someone put up, a little metal Jewish star. So I made this pronouncement, I'm gonna put a headstone up.
And there is work being done on that, at least for U.S. servicemen who were buried under in a Christian grave, or there is a group of rabbis who goes and buries them in Jewish graves.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So there is
anyway, I made this big pronouncement that I'm going to make.
Professor Benjamin O'Hain will.
So in the 25 newspaper articles about the fact that we visited, it's all in there that we're going to put up this plaque. But I actually want to put up 2 plaques. I want to put another plaque up in Civitel del Tronto of all the Jews.
I swear on my name as a professor, I will return.
All the Jews who were deported from there and killed. There should be something there that says that happened. But anyway, it's sad in this little cemetery, because there's all these nice graves of all the Christians, and the Jews have nothing. They're just dirt. And so we're going to put up, hopefully, a tombstone there.
Very nice.
What I've realized is a couple things. One, because I thought about it. One is, and this is true of all Holocaust stories, is you focus on what you hear about, but you don't on what you don't. I'm going to elaborate on that. I think about now my uncle's story as I learned more and more during COVID, and now until the time where he is deported. But how horrible must it have been for this man, meaning to end up at Auschwitz? It's unimaginable. And then to be... you hear the Russians, and then you're shipped off to Mauthausen, and then to die there starving, with all these other Jews, it must have been unbelievable. But then I also think about her, meaning actually, my great aunt, I'll say it, right? She loved this man, meaning he was everything to her. She followed him all across Europe, to the middle of literally nowhere. This place is nowhere, and stayed with him and tried to support him and tried to get him out, and then just died alone, completely alone in a hospital. To the extent that she was put in a pauper's grave, and she only was left a bag, and the bag is 90% his stuff.
Has there been any contact with her family?
He said there is no family. They were
just parents. And
there was family. I think they were killed in the bombings, or I don't even know. He said something, in fact, that there's no way really to find her.
Well, your uncle,
her relatives.
Your uncle Ignaz, was stubborn, like you said, and he didn't want to run that far anyway. And it didn't, and he was in love with a woman that he didn't want to leave either, and she didn't want to leave him. There's a,
Yeah. I there's no way to know. I think he also there are other stories that you can read of people who escaped, went into the mountains during this period when it was
sounds like you could escape.
So uncertain.
It doesn't sound like there was such good security.
You could escape, but some were rounded up, meaning the Germans were looking for these Jews also. Right. And the Italian police helped. I don't want to make the Italians out to be all saints. There's a lot of debate about the fact that, they gave up Jews sometimes, right. But overall in this region, at least it doesn't seem like that happened. But I think he probably also relied too much on the fact that he was smart and that he was always in a leadership position. It kept happening where I guess him being a lawyer, him being able to speak Italian and German, it just thought he could make his way through. But in the Holocaust, that's not the way it worked. Yeah. And so it's a tragic, horrible story. I do, like I said, I've come to appreciate her story more and accept her story more, meaning the story, the actual story has been in my mind since 2020, right? That's when I learned all this stuff from reading all these Italian articles and seeing what was on television there. It's funny to walk around Italy. So we met the mayors of all these towns. In his town in Giulianova, we were sitting in the biggest room with the most beautiful view of the sea and the church, and this beautiful assistant mayor is talking and talking and talking.
Wait a minute, what beautiful assistant mayor?
The beautiful assistant mayor of Giulianova. That's why you have to go there. Okay. And my mind's wondering, how crazy is this? Who if my great uncle would ever think I'm on this journey after him to all the places that he was and trying to understand the story. And I'm sure it's not even over, because at some point we'll get all the scans of all these documents that I could barely understand what I was even seeing. And the story will even come to life more.
It would be amazing to find a relative of hers and for it to have some contact with her family.
Right. The point I made a speech in every town. So I made at least 3 speeches because I felt like...
I hope you plugged the podcast.
No, I didn't. I should have. Because I wanted to say something to them because they were saying so many things to me. Right. And I didn't always know what they were talking about. And I would say that they should be proud of their grandparents and great-grandparents who, with everything that I've read and seen, were decent people to the Jews who all showed up here. And there's something to that. There's something to you feel good being in a place where you have a sense that even though they were on the run and different, that they were treated basically humanely by most people. Okay. Right. So that was a nice part of the trip. It was, but the other point that I made to them was, and I made sure to say this.
You don't think Guido right now is handling his fascist mug saying, I fooled the Professor Benji.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Although his grandfather, I don't know. I don't know the real story. I don't know how much his grandfather had to, maybe his grandfather could have helped a lot more and told them, the truck's going to take you this morning. Get out, right? Maybe he could have. But the other speech that I made was I wanted them, because to me, it's completely weird. This story is a story on some level. Because there are so many Holocaust stories, and every survival story actually is a crazy twist of fate. Nobody just survived for no reason. And I made the point every time that when I was talking about the fact that their ancestors helped, I would bring up my mother's family. And I would say it's very different than the other side of my family in Poland, where the entire shtetl was killed basically in one day. And, because I do think it's important that they're very proud of their Holocaust story, even though there's a lot not to be proud of. I'll say that again. But it's important that they not just focus on this little love story here. There's just so much more to it. And it almost always ended horribly.
Right. All right. Benji, thank you for sharing this incredible story.
My pleasure. We're going to do another one when I go back and put up the plaque.
Yep. And and we're looking forward to having some guests. We have some guests lined up.
I can't wait.
And our first actual...
Although I like the guest spot. I like this
Yes,
chair.
spot.
Yeah.
I like the interviewer spot. A lot of times you ask the questions.
Oh, no, I don't want to get used to that. Yeah.
And I'm going to put on my resume, interviewed a professor
From Boston.
from Boston. Allora, Benji. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.